Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is the 5th video in the series of learning belly dance for beginners for 2023. If you haven't checked out the first 4 videos, I highly advise you to do so before today's video because today's move depends highly on the second video of the series, which is the hip slide. So in the previous video, we have learned the inner hip circle, which was the first compound movement of this series. The inner hip circle is a highly controlled circle because we are making sure that it's not exiting the body at all, not pushing front and back and not pushing side to side. We're rotating underneath the chest inside the body. But now the outer hip circle for today is going to break that rule and is going to push outside of the body. We're going to be using the slide. But most importantly is not to let the hip lift up and down while we're sliding. So we don't want to see this. Do you see the hip lift? Make sure that your knees don't affect your slide. And that is what we learned in the second video of this series. So when we're sliding, we're making sure that the upper body is stable and the knees are not affecting the hip slide. So it's always horizontal with the floor. It's like I'm sliding my hip on the floor. Both hips are always at the same level. So if you're ready, let's get started. So as we said, the first move that we're going to do for the circle is the hip slide. So I'm sliding right and left with my hips. Upper body is not affected, but during the circle, we will allow the upper body to give us a reaction if we want to enlarge the circle. But for the basic slide, the upper body is stable. Now for the second move that we're going to do is going to be the push forward and the slide back. This move is completely opposite to the inner hip circle. In the inner hip circle, we try to tuck in and release the tuck. Tuck, release, tuck, release. And we tried to avoid completely doing the push forward and the slide back. But now we're doing the opposite. We're actually pushing forward and sliding back. And we're not letting the hip do a tilt, an obvious tilt in the circle, but we will have abdominals tight because we want them to protect the lower back. So I will explain to you how to keep your abs tight during this move. So when we push forward, you're using your glutes, contracting both glutes to push your hip forward away from your feet, right? So your feet are here, you're pushing it away from your feet in the front. Make sure your knees are slightly bent so you don't feel a lot of resistance, because if my knees are locked, I'm going to feel like it's almost all the tension on my muscles here pulling, and then my glutes are trying super hard. If I bend my knees a little bit, I have some aid from them, but I want to pay attention that my knees are not bending further than my hips, right? This is a different move. I don't want my knees to be the most forward thing. I want my hips to be more protruding forward. Knees could be at the same level, but most importantly, not more than the hips, right? So I'm grabbing the floor with my feet, heel and ball on the floor, and I'm pushing my hips forward. Chest is lifted, so I don't want to crash into the movement because I will feel a lot of weight on my lower back. So chest is lifted, abs are tight, so I'm pulling in all my abs, not just lower abs, pulling my abs in to protect my lower back. If I just dunk it into my lower back like this, I'm going to feel a lot of pressure. So lift the chest, abs are tight, and push forward with slightly bent knees. Now I'm going to use my hip flexors to actually bend or fold my body. So when I push my hips back, I'm not thinking about lowering my head down. I'm actually thinking about keeping my head here, but pulling my glutes to the back. So my hips are being pulled further away from my heels, right? So I want my hips to be further than the heel. I don't want my head just to go down like this because I'm going to fall forward, right? So pulling the hips back, right? So these are the 4 movements that will be combined: sliding, pushing forward, sliding, and pulling back. And when I do this, connect the moves, I don't just go sharply from one to the other like a square. I want to actually arch the hip. So from the slide, I'm arching, and then hitting forward. Arching, and hitting side. Arching, and hitting the back. So I actually draw a circle with my hip and I don't take shortcuts. So I want to make sure that I'm not twisting my hip. So I'm not doing this, see? Because this is like a figure 8. I want my hips always to be looking forward. So front, back, side, front, side, back. I'm not twisting and doing this, right? And now I want to change up the size of the circle. When I change up the size of the circle, the shape of the circle or the look of the circle is a bit different. So if I close my legs and I make sure that my upper body is not moving, I will get the smallest look of the circle. So I'm barely rotating around my body, but I'm not doing an inner hip circle, right? My knees are not affecting the move. My hips are level, and I'm just doing a very small circle. Slide, push forward, slide, and back. Slide, forward, slide, back. Now, if I just have a bigger gap between my legs and I allow my upper body to actually give me a reaction opposite to the movement. So when I slide here, my upper body is to the other side. When I pull back, my upper body is front. Slide to the opposite, front, my upper body is a bit back, and just pay attention to your lower back. So now I have a reaction in the upper body, and the circle is bigger because I allowed this physical space between the legs so the hips can slide further out. And now I can actually do it to the point where my body folds 90 degrees forward. So let's see here, slide, push forward, slide. All of that is the same, but when I go back with my hips, I let my upper body go down, almost like 90 degrees, and I allow my knees to bend a little so I don't feel a lot of tension in my lower back. Just a slight bend. Slide, forward, slide, and fold. Slide, forward, slide, and fold. So I have a bigger reaction only when I go back with the hips and front with the upper body. The last shape of it, it's a bit difficult, but you can keep it in mind for later when you're more comfortable with the circle, is to have a complete reaction with the upper body. So instead of just doing this, I actually go down with the upper body. So I want to draw a circle here with the upper body. So it's like a circle on the screen, but with my head. So when I slide with my hip, I go to the other side with my upper body, but I keep my shoulders facing the camera. So I don't do this. I face the camera. So this shoulder, the opposite shoulder, is to the ceiling. I go down, I go down, I go down. Then when I reach the middle, I let my upper body reset. So I'm almost looking at my feet. And then I switch shoulders. So now this shoulder is up, and then I go back up and push hips forward. So slide and come down, go back with the hips and come down with the upper body, switch shoulders and slide, push forward with the hips. So this is an exaggerated hip circle. It has a bigger reaction with the upper body, but you can do it as small as it would suit you. So you don't have to go all the way down. More practice and more stretching will allow you to go further down, but you can just keep it here, for example, for now, just to get used to the motion, right? So this was the hip circle, the outer hip circle. So the next video will be our last video in this series. We will conclude the series with the upward figure eight and the downward figure eight. All right, guys, if you would like to book a live Zoom class with me, the booking link is in the description, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.